Cauchy's theorem. So last time I wrote the full statement, but I will just mention the salient points today. So under appropriate continuity conditions, we have that T, there exists tau of x comma t such that T of x t n is equal to tau of x t times n. And so the first statement, and the second statement was that tau of x comma t satisfies del dot tau plus rho v is equal to rho times dv by dt. So, okay, so these are the two statements. So let us now try to prove this particular theorem. So this is the same proof as what Cauchy had used. So that is the reason that it is called as Cauchy's theorem. So we will use the same proof here. So this is let me just redraw this. So consider this tetrahedron, okay, with faces OAC, OBC, OAB, and ABC. So here you can think about it that this ABC is an inclined face, okay, so that is an inclined face, and then the remaining faces are coinciding with the, so for example OAC is coinciding with the E1, E3 face. Then OAB is lying in the E1, E2 plane, and OBC is lying in the E2, E3 plane. Okay, so these are just flat surfaces, and this inclined surface ABC is connecting these vertices here. So, so suppose now let us just give names to each of these faces. So S, let us call it as triangle ABC. Then S1 is triangle OBC. Then S2 is triangle OAC, and let's call S3 as the triangle OAB. So these are just some labels that we are giving to each of these faces here. Fine. Now, the components of this normal n are given by these n1, n2, and n3 here. So the outward normal to the faces are given by following. So the outward normal to ABC is n. Then the outward normal to OBC, so to this particular face, the outward normal is minus E1. Then the outward normal to this face is minus E2, and the outward normal to OAB is minus E3. Okay, so these are the what I am indicating here are the outward normals to these faces, right? right? So by outward we mean that if you take the tetrahedron, then whatever is pointing outside, outside away from the tetrahedron, that is what we call as the outward normal. Okay, now we will apply the balance of linear momentum to this particular tetrahedron. So I will write now this rho times dv by dt minus b times dv over b of t is equal to integral of t of x tn plus integral of t of x t minus e1 times ds over s1 plus integral of t of x t minus e2 times ds. This is over ds also. Ds. This is over s of t. Then txt minus e2 ds. This is ds. So this one here is ds1. Let me call it. This is ds2. This is over s2 plus integral of t of xt minus e3 times ds3. This is over s3. Yeah. This is over s3. Okay. So yes. So all I have done here is that I have applied the second transport theorem to get this. Okay. So this is by tt2. Okay. So last time we derived this second transport theorem. So the d by dt that was outside the integral sign can be taken up inside, and then that becomes rho dv by dt. This is the body force, and so you can club it in this particular way here. And then this is what I have done is here I have split the traction over the surface into these four parts corresponding to the four surfaces of the tetrahedron. So that is this surface S, which is this ABC, the inclined surface, S1, which is this OBC, S2, which is OAC, and S3, which is OAB. So I have just split the integral into these parts here. Now we will use the mean value theorem to simplify this particular expression here. So by the mean value theorem, we will get that rho times dv by dt minus v evaluated at x double star, then ah by 3 is equal to t of x star comma t comma n plus t of xi star comma t comma minus ei times ni times t. Or if you want, actually let me just put a summation sign here. So this is I equal to 1, 2, 3. Yes, I'll just put a, because this index I is occurring 3 times, so let me put the summation sign explicitly here. Okay, now here what I have done is that I have used the fact that S1 is equal to, so this is area of S1 is equal to N1 times area of S, then area of S2. So this symbol A stands for the area. So area of S2 is equal to N2 times area of S, and area of S3 is equal to N3 times area of S. Okay, so this I am using this because you can see that this what I am doing is that I am taking some point inside each of these surfaces. So the mean value theorem says that the value of this integral is equal to the value of the integrand evaluated at a particular point, let's say on this particular surface, times the area of this particular surface. Now the area of this S1 surface is equal to whatever is written here, area of S1 is N1 times A of S. So that is how you get this summation here. So you will get N1 times A. So this A is just the area of this triangle ABC here. Okay, so this area A here, so this area A is actually the area of this triangle. So A is the area of ABC, area of triangle ABC. Okay, so we can write it in this particular way. So basically what the mean value theorem says is that suppose if you take this particular integral, then the value of this integral is equal to the value of the integrand evaluated at some point in the interior. Okay, so this x double star is some point in the interior of this tetrahedron multiplied by the volume of the tetrahedron. Now this volume of the tetrahedron is the area of this particular surface ABC times the h. That h is the perpendicular distance from O to this inclined surface. So you can imagine that this here is the inclined surface, this here is the origin. Okay, so basically if you drop a perpendicular from this origin to this inclined surface, right, this perpendicular distance is this distance h here. Okay, so that is just basically this is just the formula for the volume of a tetrahedron. It is the area of this ABC multiplied by the height. Okay, so that height is just, as I said, the distance from O to the inclined surface. Okay, so this this term is obtained from the mean value theorem from this particular term here. Similarly, this particular term goes to this particular term here. So that means there is some x star which is lying on this surface S, which is this ABC, such that the value of this integral is equal to the value of the integrand multiplied by the area, and as we said, the area is ABC, and so on. So you will see that basically by the mean value theorem, I am replacing it. I am replacing this whole integral by this particular formula here. So similarly, these xi stars are points on the surfaces S1, S2 and S3. Okay, just so very similar to how the x star was lying on this particular surface. So the x1 star is what lies on S1, x2 star is a point lying on S2, and x3 star is a point lying on S3. So we do not know where these x star and x1 star and x2 star and x3 star lie, and that is immaterial. We don't need to know where they lie. Okay, but we just know that there is some such point here. We just know that there is a point x star, and we know that there are points x1 star, x2 star and x3 star, such that these integrals can be written in this particular way. Okay, so that is all that we need to know. Fine. Now we take the limit as h tends to 0. Okay, so take the limit as h tends to 0. Okay, so that means, so now you can imagine that this ABC is this inclined face here, and here O is the origin here. So what you are doing is that you are shrinking this tetrahedron to a point here. Okay, so basically this inclined surface, you are bringing it closer and closer to the origin. So that means this h is tending to 0, but the important point to note is that this inclined face maintains its normal. See, when I'm doing this shrinking of the tetrahedron, the normal still is aligned along the same direction. So we do not allow it to turn and twist in this particular way. Just basically you can see this. So the normal n just remains as it is, and you are simply shrinking this face down here to the origin. You are bringing it closer and closer to the origin, so that h tends to 0. Okay, then you'll see that once you let h tend to 0, then the points which are lying on this x star, x1 star, x2 star and all these points, they will turn to x. Okay, so the position vector of this here is x, let us call it. Okay, so actually this coordinate system, you can think as if that actually the coordinate system is here. This coordinate system, you are just drawing the axis parallel to this particular coordinate system, which is a global coordinate system. So actually the position vector of this particular point is actually x. So all this is happening at some point, okay, within the body, and then all we are doing is that we are establishing a local coordinate system which is parallel to this particular axis here. And the position vector of this particular point is x. So what happens is that all these x star, x1 star, x2 star, x3 star, they all tend to x. So as h tends to 0, then all of these quantities tend to this particular thing. So what you will get, so this term now goes to 0 because h is going to 0, right? And then this sum will also go to 0. So we will get that t of x t n is equal to minus summation of t of x t minus ei ni. Because the a just gets cancelled. Okay, so the a does not play any role because that is just outside of the whole bracket there. So this is the result that you will get here. So as I said that see this x star, right, that tends to x, then the x1 star also tends to x, x2 star tends to x, and x3 star tends to x. So that is why we replace this because in the limit we are replacing this by x itself. And so this is I equal to 1 to 3. So this is what you will get here. Okay. Then now, now we will use the continuity. So if you go back to the statement of the theorem, we saw that we have said that t is continuous with respect to the normal. Correct? So let us use this continuity. So let now n tend to E1, which is 1, 0, 0. So that is just our canonical basis vector. So let it tend to E1, which is 1, 0, 0. So in this particular thing, what I will get is that I will get t x t E1 is equal to minus of t of x t minus E1. Okay, this is minus E1, and see, so what happens is that only now the first component will play a role because that is 1 here, and n2 is 0 and n3 is 0. So the I equal to 2 and 3, those terms do not contribute. So only the I equal to 1 term contributes, and so you will get this particular result here. Then similarly, so let me just write it here. So similarly, you will get that t of x t E2 is minus of t of x t minus E2, and t of x t E3 is equal to minus t of x t minus E3. Okay, so say in a similar way. So basically you will let n tend to E2, then you will get this. Then when n tends to E3, then you will get this particular result here. Okay, so now what we have shown is that t of x t E1 is minus t x t minus E1, t of x t E2 is minus t of x t minus E2, t of x t E3 is minus t of x t. So we will substitute that now in this particular result here. Okay, so here you will see that if I this minus of t x t minus E1 I can now replace by t x t E1. Okay, so let me just substitute it here and see what I get. So yes, so let me call this as 1, and this whole group of equations, let me call this as 2. Okay, so this whole group of equations, let us call this as 2. Yes, so from 1 and 2, now what we get from 1 and 2, what we get is that t of x t n is equal to summation of I equal to 1 to 3 of t x t ei times ni. So this is the result that we get. So basically what we have shown is that the traction depends linearly on the normal. Okay, so after all this process of first applying the balance of linear momentum to the tetrahedron, then shrinking the tetrahedron to 0, then taking the limit as n tends to E1, E2 and E3, and then substituting it back into this result here, this is what we get, right? So this is what we have shown, as I said, is that the traction vector depends linearly on the normal here. Okay, so what result do I get if I put minus n here? So I'll get that t of xt minus n. So here you put minus n, right? So then you will get minus of summation I equal to 1 to 3 of t of xt ei and I, right? And that is nothing but minus of t of xtn. So move this also. Yes. So what we have shown now is t of xt minus n is equal to minus of t xtn. So this is nothing but, you can call it as the analog of Newton's law of action and reaction. Okay, so let me just draw a picture to illustrate this. So this is analogous to third law, Newton's third law. Let us draw a picture here. So suppose if two bodies are touching each other, right, like this. Okay, so this body is pressing on the first one, and then the first one is also pressing against the second one with a reaction that is equal and opposite to the force that is exerted by the first body on the second body. Correct? So that is this law of action and reaction. So if I now separate these two bodies to show the traction vector, then this is what it would look. So now imagine that at this contact point, what is happening is the following here. So I'm just drawing it apart now. So this is your n, and suppose if this body is applying this traction T of xtn, right, on this, so this is the traction that is exerted by this particular body on this particular body at this particular point here, right? So n is the normal to the surface. Then correspondingly on this particular body there will be an equal and opposite reaction that is exerted by this particular body. So that, let us just draw that. So for this body now, this other body that I have drawn here, then now you have an equal and opposite normal, now equal and opposite to this, and an equal and opposite traction. So if this traction is acting in this particular way, there is an equal and opposite traction that is acting on this particular body here. So T of xtn. So this is so if you want, you can write this as maybe minus n, and this would be T of xt minus n. So this is the traction. So this is the traction that is acting equal and opposite in an opposite direction to the traction that is acting on this particular surface. So as I said, that, so you can say that this is a very significant generalization of Newton's third law. So because typically, when we are introduced to this Newton's third law, we are not introduced to this concept of traction and so on and so forth, right? So here, we are now stating this law in a much more rigorous way, right? In terms of the traction, because these bodies, they can be in contact over a surface, right? And so this law of action and reaction is happening at every point of the contacting surface here, right? So at every point you have this T of xt minus n is minus of T of xt n. Yes, so this is analogous to this Newton's third law. Now let us define the stress tensor. Okay, So now define the Cauchy stress tensor. Now define the Cauchy stress tensor. Tau of x comma t as equal to summation of k equal to 1 to 3 of t of x t e k dyadic e k. Okay. So this is t of x t e1 dyadic e1 plus t of x t e2 dyadic e2 plus t of x t e3 dyadic e3. So this is how, so this colon equal to, again I'll put a colon equal to, so the colon equal to indicates that it is a definition of the stress tensor. So this is now the stress at this particular point. Okay, so this is the position vector of this particular point is x, and let's say it is happening at some instant t, then this is how we define the stress tensor. So note that the traction depends on the normal, but the stress tensor does not depend on the normal, right? So this is something to be noted here. And let us now find out what the components of this stress tensor are. So this tau or ij is equal to ei dot tau ej. So this is our standard formula for finding the components of this. So if you multiply this by ej, right, then you will get ek dot ej, which will be delta kj, correct, and then ei dot t, that will give me ti, that is the ith component of the traction. So what I will get here is that this is equal to ti of xt ej, xt ej. Okay, so this is now the formula for the component. So these things are very, very important. This is the definition of the Cauchy stress tensor. So this is the actual or the real stress that is experienced by the body due to the action of some forces that are acting on the body, and this stress is acting at this particular point and at this instant in time t. Yes. So let us draw a picture to show now how these components act. Okay, so yes, so E2, E3 coordinate system is here, and this is basically this is being drawn at some position vector x, and the traction, let us call it as T1, and let us call this traction here as, okay, just let me just change this I am calling E2, and let me call this as 3. Okay, so then the traction here is T2, and the traction acting on this particular phase, let us call it as T3. Okay, so this is the traction. So first of all, let me just clarify this. So although I have shown it like a cube, this is just a device to clarify things, but what you have to remember is actually these are just 3 planes that are passing through the same point. So this cube does not have any width. So actually, I mean, so basically at this particular point, these are just 3 planes. It would get very confusing if I drew it in this particular way, right? So this particular plane is actually like a horizontal plane. Then this plane here is this vertical plane. They are all passing through this particular point. So this cube, although I am showing it like a cube, this does not have any width actually. But this cube is just a convenient device to represent these various components. But actually what you should remember is that they are all acting on just planes that are passing through this particular point here, which has a position vector of x with respect to the global coordinate system here. Yeah, so this T1 is the vector, is the traction vector that is acting on this particular phase. T2 is the traction vector that is acting on this phase, which has a normal E2, and T3 is the traction acting on the phase whose normal is E3. Okay, so this one subscript basically indicates that the normal to this phase is E1. This superscript 2 indicates that the normal to this particular phase is E2, and this superscript 3 indicates that the normal to this particular phase is 3. So that is why these superscripts are given to show that the normal is in that particular direction here. Alright, then now what we do is that we resolve these traction vectors into 3 components. Okay, so you will get a total of 9 components, because this traction vector I will resolve into 3, this one I will resolve into 3, this one I will resolve into 3. So on the other phases, they will be just equal and opposite because of that law that we just derived. So we don't need to define any more additional components on the back phases. They are just equal and opposite to whatever I am drawing in this particular phases here. So now if I resolve it, then this is what it will look like. So now we resolve these traction vectors into 3 components, right? Each traction vector is resolved into 3 components, so that gives a total of 9 components. Okay, so which I am labeling here: tau 11, tau 21, tau 31, tau 12, tau 22, tau 32, and tau 13, tau 23, and tau 33. So actually, that whatever I have drawn here actually follows just from this particular formula here. Okay, so this tau ij is this Ti acting on this xtej. So let us take this j to be 1. Okay, so if you take j to be 1, then that is basically the phase whose normal is E1. Correct? So that is this particular phase here. So this is E1 actually. Yes. So here the second index indicates the normal. Correct? So that is 1. So here you can see that all of them are 1. So that means the normal is E1 here. Okay, now same way, if you take the second index, that is the normal E2. So that is why that 2 indicates that the normal to this particular phase is 2. Then the third, for this particular phase, the second index, that is 3, that is indicating that the normal is E3. Okay, so that is the way, so that this particular index, the second index, J, is indicating that the normal is along EJ. And then what about the first index? The first index is just giving the direction of the traction vector, right? So this 1 here, that means that it is along the E1 direction. This 2 means it is along the second direction, and this 3 means it's along the third direction. The same way here. So this is 1 means it's along the 1 direction, 2 means it's along the second direction, 3 means it's along the third direction. Similarly here, 1 again same first direction. This is along the E2 direction, and this is along the 3 direction. So basically the ijth component of the stress tensor is the ith component of the traction acting on the phase whose normal is EJ. Okay, so that actually this is just a pictorial representation of this particular formula for the components of a stress tensor. Now here again the same thing I will repeat here, that this is just a device for showing these the various planes. So actually again this cube does not have any dimensions, so I am just emphasizing that. So basically these are just different planes that are passing through a given point here. Okay, so although see if I try to show it as different planes at the same point, the whole picture would get very confusing. So this cube is just a device to show these various components at a given particular point here. So yes, now we'll proceed ahead. So we will now come to the first statement in the theorem, that that is a Cauchy principle, that is the relation between the traction and the stress tensor. So let us now derive that. So if I now multiply this tau, correct, by n, okay, so tau times n, now tau times n is summation of t of x t e k times n dot e k, correct, n dot e k, because that is just the usual definition of the diagonal product, right? So this is k equal to 1 to 3, and so what you will get is that t of x t e k times n k, and this is k equal to 1 to 3, and we had just shown, correct, in the previous part of this proof that this is nothing but the traction vector itself. So this is nothing but the t of x t n acting on that particular surface. So what we have shown is that tau times n. So suppose if you take some surface with some normal n, okay, then the stress tensor, suppose at this particular point, is xt, correct, and then if you multiply this tau of xt with n, then you will get the traction that is acting on that particular surface here. Okay, so suppose if you at the same point now, if you took some other surface, so let me draw it as a dotted line, and now okay, so let me erase this because otherwise it will get confusing. So the stress tensor is still the same. So here at this particular point, your t of tau of xt is still the same. Now for this dotted line, suppose if this is the normal, then let me call it as n tilde, then the traction t tilde, right, which is acting on this particular surface now, this dotted line, then that you will get the new traction vector by simply multiplying the stress tensor. So the stress tensor at this particular point is not changing, right? Only the surfaces, different surfaces that are passing through this particular point, they have different normals, and then when you multiply the stress tensor with the normal that of the surface that is passing through that particular point, you will get the traction vector that is acting on that particular surface. So here you will get on this dashed line now, n tilde is the normal, and so t tilde of x t n tilde is equal to tau of x comma t times n tilde. Okay, so that will be the traction vector that is acting on this surface, which is shown by this dash line. So this is a very important principle. This is known as the Cauchy principle. So let me just rewrite that here because it is so important. So what we have shown is the following. So what we have shown is that t of x t n is equal to tau of x comma t times n. Okay, so this is a very important thing, and so this is known as the Cauchy formula or Cauchy principle. So this is a Cauchy principle. So basically it says that the traction depends linearly on the normal. Okay, so that is a important thing in all of this proof here, that the traction vector is the product of a second order tensor. So this tau is a second order tensor. So let me just write that xt is a SOT. Okay, because it maps a vector to a vector, and also it's a linear transformation. So if you replace this by alpha times n1 plus beta times n2, then you would get it as alpha times tau n1 plus beta times tau n2. Correct? So that is why it is linear, right, in n, and so it represents a second order tensor here. Right, and then now the thing that is left for us to prove is the governing differential equation for tau. So let us do that now. So let us go back now again to the balance of linear momentum. So here let me write it as rho times dv by dt times dv over v of t is equal to integral of tau n times ds over s of t plus integral rho v of x comma t times dv over v of t. So this was our balance of linear momentum. So if you recall, this is v of t, which is our material volume. This is t of x t n. So this is the traction that is acting, and now what we have shown is that the traction is equal to tau times n. So I can replace it in this particular way, right? And then now I can apply the divergence theorem here. So this goes to del dot tau times dv over v of t plus integral rho times b of x comma t times dv. Okay, here I have already applied this second transport theorem, right? So just like in the proof of Cauchy's theorem, I had applied the second transport theorem in the same way I have done this. Now so all of these integrals are now volume integrals, right, over the material volume. So I can now club them all together. So let me write that here. So I'll get now v of t of rho times dv by dt minus del dot tau minus rho v times dv is equal to 0 for all v of t. See, so now you can see that this statement is valid no matter what material volume I use, right? So suppose if I had chosen my v of t to be a subset of this v of t, then the traction vectors would have been something that is acting on the surface of this material volume, correct? And then the body forces are the body forces that are acting on this material volume, and so on. So the choice of this material volume is completely arbitrary, right? And you'll still get the same statement, right? And then now we can use localization, right? Which I covered at the end of the first chapter. So by the localization theorem, if the integral is 0 for all v of t, then the integrand is also 0. Right? So let us just write that here. So by localization, by the localization theorem, we will get that rho times dv by dt is equal to del dot tau plus rho v of x comma t. So this is now the governing partial differential equation for the stress tensor, right? So this remember that this gradient is with respect to the spatial position x. Okay, so remember that even this stress is defined on the deformed configuration. So it is the real stress that is experienced by the material at that particular point, right? So if you recall, in strength of materials, we define the stress in a very loose way, right? Force per unit area, things like that. But it is very difficult to generalize that kind of a definition to a tensor, right? Because finally your stress has 9 components, and so this is a much more rigorous way of defining the stress tensor through the concept of a traction that is acting on 3 different planes at a given point, right? And then so basically you are considering the traction on 3 different planes with normals E1, E2 and E3 at a given point. Then you are resolving the traction vector into 3 different components. So the 3 traction vectors lead to 9 components, and so right now this stress tensor is a tensor with 9 components, right? But so finally at a later stage we will show that the stress tensor is also symmetric. Okay, but at this stage we cannot show that the stress tensor is symmetric. Right now it has 9 components, but because of the symmetry we will show that it has only 6 components here. Right. So we can also show the converse of this theorem. So here what we have shown is that so let me just show this. So I have shown that the balance of linear momentum, implies T is equal to tau n and this particular formula, and rho times dV by dt is equal to del dot tau plus rho b. Okay, this we have shown. Now conversely, okay, so let me just write it here. Conversely, these two relations imply the balance of linear momentum. So conversely, so let me call these relations as star. So conversely, star implies balance of linear momentum also. Balance of linear momentum. So that is actually just a reversal of the steps here. So that is, so suppose if I start with d by dt of integral of rho v times dv, so that I can write as rho times dv by dt times dv, right? So this is by the second transport theorem, second dt2. Then rho dv by dt is del dot tau plus rho b. So this I can replace by del dot tau plus rho b times dv over v. Then apply the divergence theorem. So this becomes tau times n times ds over s of t plus integral rho b times dv over v of t. And this tau times n is a traction, right? That is what we have shown. So that is equal to integral of t of xtn times ds plus integral rho b times dv over v of t. And this is our s of t. So this was our starting statement, right? The balance of linear momentum. So we have shown that the rate of change of linear momentum is equal to the sum of forces that is acting on the material volume. So if you, so as I said that if you start with balance of linear momentum, then it implies the Cauchy principle and the differential form of motion. And conversely, if you assume these two results to hold, then the balance of linear momentum also holds. Okay. I think we will stop here.